That's right, we didn't hear that before. Good evening, everybody. We're going to have a work session on Title V and the Good Neighbor Guidelines piece of short-term rentals. And Nina's going to go over the Title V draft that's been put together. And then at the end, we'll go over a preliminary Good Neighbor Guidelines draft and short-term rental application that we put together. All right, so I'll turn it over to Nina.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So what was sent around and what's up on your screen is a draft of an ordinance that we had from the past, but previously addressed both Title 18 and Title 5. So ever since the passage of the Citizen Initiative, that amended Title 18, but it doesn't have corresponding business license regulations. So what I did is I produced a draft ordinance for your consideration, see where you all want to go for policy direction. It is, for the most part, the ordinance that was vetted by Planning Commission, by City Council, and then just to make sure it corresponds with what is passed with Title 18. So first we have definitions, which I think are important. It was drafted purposefully. And then the licensing limitations requirements. So this is what is going to really allow your city to enforce short-term rentals in your community, to make sure you're mitigating the impacts and all the other issues that you might want to address with short-term rentals. You clarified what zoning districts they are, your citizens did, but now how do you put those regulations in for the business licensing side? So we could do it section by section if you have questions, or if you just want me to go briefly through. This is just, again, from the past iterations, and there's purposeful reasons for, even if I'm going down to, I'm looking at subsection G that talks about designated local contact person. That seems important where to the community, like if there's something that's going on, you want to be able to contact the right person. This section about what's prohibited, that's directly from the initiative, so that really should still be there because that's from our new Title 18 amendments. J speaks about parking. That always seems to be important to mitigate impacts of short-term rentals, is that at least that the property owner ensures that there are delineated off-street parking. So where it's going to show on a plan where the parking is going to be for that's not going to be on the street, so it's not going to overflow into the street. Then we talk about applications, conditions. This is where the enforcement piece comes in. Similar to a liquor license, which is another type of business license that has value. Really the best way to enforce it is that threat of revocation. And within the ordinance, it refers to the Good Neighbor Guidelines. So a draft are in front of you. I think this is produced from community input, and also I guess a year or so ago, from Grace and her team, and Michael and Aaron, and then a draft application. So that's a very quick overview. I know that there's going to be comments and direction, but I'll let you speak about the Good Neighbor Guidelines now, and then we can get input from council.
Absolutely. So the Good Neighbor Guidelines document, if you look at that one, I think that we've touched on all of the different subsections that we have heard about over the last 3 years and what we're looking to put in the Good Neighbor Guideline document. This is a rough draft. It does need to be edited a little bit on formatting and also on some of the content under the subsections. But if you want to just let us know as a staff if we've missed any of the headings that you were looking to see in there, I think we've got them all. But if you have any questions on that, the purpose of this meeting really is just get your feedback so that we can get this right. I know we have the moratorium in effect until April 1st, and we just want to make sure at a staff level that we've prepared to be ready for that.
Yeah, Aaron, I want to ask you about the Good Neighbor Guidelines.
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
want to ask you about the Good Neighbor Guidelines.
Yes.
Really, the Good Neighbor Guidelines are all already statute and code that's in place, correct? And we're just bringing them
Not
to the fore?
necessarily. Some of them are best practices that we are looking for the short-term rentals to abide by.
Can you articulate which ones those are?
Absolutely. So We have, so I'll just go through them in here. We have 24-hour responsible agent contact. That is going to be in Title V, and that's also going to be in the application. We have wildfire safety and prevention. That one is in our code. Respect for wildlife is in our code. Respect for your neighbors. Please be friendly and courteous and treat your neighbors as you would like to be treated. Respect your neighbors and their property. The property owner and a responsible agent shall inform all renters of property boundaries and limitations. I mean, that's really a best practice that we're looking for from the businesses. Noise and outdoor lighting. This is a little different than what's in the code, but it does refer to the noise ordinance, the timing and who to contact. And then also respectfulness with lighting in terms of these. So that's not necessarily in the code, but it is best practice. And when we look out at what other cities are doing, this is pretty consistent with what's out there. Maintenance of property, be sure to keep the property clean, presentable, and free of trash and debris. Trash and recycling. So this one, place all trash and recycling in the designated containers stored indoors in order to prevent issues for wildfire and or snow removal operators. And then bear-proof trash cans are required and must be used to prevent issues for wildlife. That's not specifically in the code, I don't believe, but it's what we're looking for in the best practices here. Parking and traffic safety. So this will be referred to in Title V and then also in the application itself, that they have to have a parking plan and that they have to abide by that. Maximum capacity, that's going to be as part of the application process. Driving conditions, that's going to be kind of best practice there. Pets, that is in code that they have to be on a leash in city parks, but it's also best practices. And then the little part at the end about the fact that all the renters within the property have to receive the Good Neighbor Guidelines and the parking agreement. So that's what's in here. So it's not necessarily all spelled out in code. Some of it is best practices that we would expect from them.
And someone who gets signs on for an application and also signs a license would have notice of this and that this is part of their license, the requirements of their license.
So enforcement of this is going to be tied to their license, because otherwise if it's not what's in code, then you're creating a special category for people to do stuff that the rest of the community doesn't.
Correct. And if you look at the short-term rental application that
The next
behind the
page.
Good Neighbor, yeah, it's the next page. This is what they would be required to complete in order to get their license every year. And it is a ZDP application that would have a fee attached to it, which we are right now looking to be about $100 because that's right in line with our other ZDP applications.
Say that, how much?
$100.
So the application fee is separate from their license fee?
Correct. They would
So
have
they'll pay
they would have
$100
business
and they'll pay
license.
35 for the,
Correct.
okay.
Question. Bear-proof trash cans. Are there bear-proof trash cans or are they just bear resistant?
That's a great question. And that's something we need to go through on the final editing.
Because I know that they have really good ones and the metal ones we have in Memorial Park work very well.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you can ever bear-proof anything because they're pretty gnarly or can be.
Excellent point.
Thank you.
So I want to go back to this Good Neighbor Guidelines from the standpoint of my recommendation is this goes through if there's any infractions and they get to the legal standpoint, it goes before a municipal court. So if you have stuff in your Good Neighbor Guidelines that's not in your code, are we putting ourselves in a position of liability to not be able to enforce it?
It would, the violations, some of these violations, correct, could not go in front of municipal court, but the due process is where the public hearing is noticed, it's in public, it's in front of you all. It's, I wrote the ordinance to make sure that there's all those due process, standards that are in there.
Well, I have a problem with having it before city council. Once we're done with this, we shouldn't have violations come before city council. They should go like they do for any other violation in the city, which is to go before the court. So what I'm asking here is if our Good Neighbor Guidelines are not what's in the law, then how are you going to enforce it? So is there a way to tie the two together?
So the way that this would be enforced practically, is very egregious case would, the staff would have to draft something that they would need to come in from the city council that their license was in threat of revocation or suspension until they remedy these issues. Any code violation, yes, can go in front of municipal court and then if they have a municipal court violation or more than two, then it could also go in front of you. That's where the teeth is truly to that revocation or suspension of that license.
Yeah, but you're not hearing me.
I'd
Why
like
is
to
it, let me
inject
finish my
something.
thoughts if you don't mind.
Well,
Why
sure.
are you creating this in such a way that it has to come before council? Nothing else comes before council that's violations of stuff. So why are you creating it in this document? Why wouldn't you just send it to the municipal court?
We probably would if it was a code violation. And any business licenses to revoke need to go through due process. But I do understand what the
Yeah.
distinction you're trying to make.
This document is not the law.
No, it's
This
guidelines.
document
That's
is
what
the
I wanted to
guideline
say.
best practice that they need to put in as part of their application.
Same thing with liquor licenses. They have conditions, their threat of revoking, which is much more serious than the $100 fine in municipal court is losing that valuable license. So it's just a way to better enforce.
Are you suggesting then that, if the good neighbor rules are violated and, revocation of a license occurs, that the applicant or licensee would come to the city council for remedy? And I think I agree with Robert on this. I don't understand why we would want a separate protocol for, our applicants. Why would we not?
Violations, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I
Go
was
ahead.
anticipating the question. I'm sorry. Somebody do that. So violations of the good neighbor guidelines itself would not go in front of council. The revocation of the business license would go in front of.
But it would be revoked because they had violated the good neighbor.
If you found out, if you did,
Code, they'd have to
They
violate
really
a
really have
noise
to be a
code,
Title
something that's
V
in. our
violation.
code.
correct,
Yeah.
But if they violate the good neighbor
which
policy.
are referenced in our code.
Yeah.
If
May
they
I-
violate the
may-
good neighbor policy and their license is revoked, their remedy for that is to come to city council. And I agree with Robert, how can we hold them accountable for something that's not in our code?
Because the code references the good neighbor guidelines,
Can I just thoughts here?
the
Good
revocation.
neighbor guidelines are provided to the tenants, to the people
Correct.
that are renting. These are not, these are for information purposes so that they can know what they
How to
need to do
behave.
and what they don't need to do. Our code is what is violated by the owner of the property because there are egregious or reoccurring problems with violations in the code. This is guidelines for renters to have notice that these are the things and the expectations of their behavior.
And then in turn, the owner would be held responsible for the violation of the good nature code.
That's right.
Therefore, the revocation
Yes,
of their license would be based on somebody who didn't follow the good neighbor code.
That's right.
Who's a guest in their place?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm seeing
That's
your
right.
point. We need to marry the two if we're gonna be able to enforce it. That's your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the code, but you can, we have listed that you could technically revoke a license or not give them the license. Because a business license is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege that is granted. So
Okay.
it's written in a way that if they do have a violation of the good neighbor guidelines, that they would come in front of you. If they have two within the last 12 months, they would come in front of you. If it goes that route, I would say having, helped many municipalities past like 7-8 years, usually what you do is you write a letter at first and the person usually remedies it. Or even if they come in front of you, then you work with the person. It's really the goal is to enforcement, or compliance to try to get into compliance. I would say that it would be very, very, very rare that you would revoke someone's license for, it would have to be
Respective
very, very, it would have to be, this is just to cover us in the most egregious circumstances, the way it's written, but obviously you guys could change
If
it.
any individual, regardless of their lodging status, violates our code, they are subject to a fine or
Fines,
citation.
which is, right, but
If someone's burning a fire when we've got a fire ban in place, for instance, or they violate our noise ordinance, or they violate our keep your dog on your damn leash law. All of those, I don't care if they live here 1 day or 1 month, they're still liable to our code.
for a ticket in municipal court, but but
Correct.
the value of this business license is much more than $100 in municipal court. So this is just to to cover all your bases.
I think where my biggest concern is that the guidelines not go outside of our existing code. And if these things are important to our existing code, we should add them, like
That's fine.
bear-proof trash cans or whatever else we threw in there that is not covered in our existing code. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, we're here for your input. I mean, that's what.
And one way you could, not get caught up in having to put that in code is to put here on your application, I have read certification, I have read and will post in my location the good citizen guidelines. And if they've posted it, then it puts a responsibility where it belongs, which is with the guest. They are letting everybody know that this is the rules of the road here. And because otherwise you're splitting your liability. You're saying they're insisting that they're going to comply for their tenants, and that doesn't really work for me. And the second thing is,
They have to.
well, that's their responsibility.
The guest isn't. The guest can do whatever they want and walk. The liability rests on the homeowner.
Ultimately.
Then you need to put it in the code,
So.
in my opinion. It
So
needs to be-
either.
yeah.
Either you respect that these homeowners are residents and fall under the same rules as you and I, or they're gonna fall under something separate, and now you're gonna wanna enforce all of that stuff on the rest of us.
No, we don't want to do that.
Exactly, Hillary.
Yeah,
That's
that's
my
exactly-
concern is
yeah.
we don't have a requirement for bear-proof trash
We
cans.
don't, but we also don't have a license to host guests. So do you wanna make more rules
No,
for the rest of us?
no, I don't.
Because that's what I'm hearing. Like, it's either this, they get this list, the neighbors have to abide, or the guests have to abide. If the guests don't abide, it's gonna fall on that owner.
You know, Frank just mentioned something very quietly with his mic off. Do we have these same kind of requirements for our business owners? Do we require them to have
Fair proof.
bear-proof trash cans?
Well, hotels maybe.
Licenses and hotels,
Thank you.
and different rules for
Well,
different
why is this
situations.
being treated any different than any other businesses? I don't understand.
Do this.
Well, this is not what I put together.
Sure.
You
3
have a
years
copy
ago,
in
we were
front of you,
asked
what I
because of
worked
The
on.
impact of the community. So 3 years ago, we drafted
Right.
these based on, yeah, like we said, best practices of other cities. If you guys don't think there's an impact to short-term rentals in your community anymore, then that's fine.
Because 3 years ago, it was going to be people who lived anywhere but owned a property here. And so you guys wanted different rules for those people, but now that it's just residents, you gotta segregate the residents that hold licenses from the rest of the residents.
Now, it appears
That's
you
what
only
this
have
is
to know
asking
what
to do.
businesses are. I don't have a business and I live in my house and I have allowed guests to stay overnight. But that's not a business. It's a home.
Right, because.
These are lodging businesses that the voters agreed on.
So.
why are
so
these
they kind
business-
of Fall under different onus.
Why are
and
they any different
responsibility.
than the hotels and lodges and the bed and breakfasts we have now?
Well, I think,
Well, they have their own regulations.
Right.
Well, I understand that, but why are we making a separate set for another lodging business?
Exactly my point.
I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me. Why would we work twice as hard for the same lodging business?
We don't have lodging license in the city of Woodland Park. So this is just a way to, you guys could decide it's not, but like the origin of it was to make sure that the impacts of short-term rentals are mitigated. So that's where this came from.
right, it's the only way to make those owners responsible. But
And
not everybody should have to fall under that.
but there still are commercial businesses in the commercial districts that don't necessarily live here that own property. So I don't know the answer, but the Good Neighbor Guidelines seem to
It's a
cover,
communication tool
yes, yes, and
for
I
people
don't have,
that don't know.
and I don't have a problem with them. I have a few minor
And the rental license and the holder,
changes, but yeah.
the holder of the rental
Signs
license
that they-
ultimately is responsible to the code.
Right.
This is a
We're on the-
communication tool to people that are staying so that they have awareness of the fire risk. They have awareness of the wildlife around them. They have awareness of and reminded that because we can't codify respect for neighbors. That's
Right.
judgmental by each person. So it's just a reminder to be friendly and nice to the people next door.
I think the
And-
only issue I had with this is that under trash and recycling, I think bear-proof trash cans are a great idea, but if we don't require that anywhere else in the city, I think that would be a difficult one for me if I owned a short-term rental to abide by, because it doesn't exist anywhere else.
The only thing I mean, so we don't have, our covenants basically require us to keep our trash cans in the garage,
Right.
to keep the bears out of them. So these guys don't know that,
Mhm.
right? So they may go put the trash bag on the street. And then you have the bear.
Yeah,
getting in the
and I've
trash,
seen it
so-
happen. I'm just
So
going back to.
I don't disagree
Yeah.
with you, but I think that's kind of the reason.
You know, it
it's in
seems
here.
like as Aaron had pointed out, almost everything in the guidelines ties back to an existing code, except for the subjective, you know, do unto others as you would have them
And-
do unto you, which is fine.
And you would not be, it also, this might also help Robert, you would not be able to revoke someone's license because they didn't have respect for neighbors.
Correct.
I would want to see a municipal code violation for
Right.
you to revoke a business
Yeah,
license. So
and
just to make that clear.
Because
That's
this
just due
is,
process, yeah.
because it is a business license, then if we're going to require this of one type of business, the bear-proof trash cans, then we should require it of all. Or not at all.
Exactly.
Require business owners to stay on their property 24/7, 365 either. So there, you can't compare a restaurant business owner or a clothing store owner
Mhm.
or any other owner.
Well,
to the home.
and I don't find that objectionable, but maybe we should require restaurant owners to have bear-proof trash cans. That's
Right.
probably where the
There-
biggest
we-
violations. I'm just going
We
back
do
to
have some residents that are required to have bear proof.
By
It's
HOA.
Not just HOAs, but I mean, within the city limits and downtown authority, we have
Oh, really?
businesses, it used to be short-term rentals, I'm not sure, and they used to be, one used to be a school or something else, but now they have chained trash cans that are actually inspected, that the chains and bear proof are still in place. It's not
Yeah,
true.
I'm not familiar with that, but I
Yeah.
can. look
I'm
into
pretty
that.
sure.
not certain about that either, but the bottom line is I know that not everyone is required. I mean, some HOAs may require it and some covenants may require it. But to tell someone who's just come here for the first time, if you don't use a bear-proof trash can, we're gonna, come and
It's-
handcuff you.
that's not the- that's
And we
not the-
can
Oh,
look and
it's-
see if any other city has actually perfected that piece of it. And I don't know if they
It's,
have.
this is, when they sign the application, they're agreeing to be a good neighbor.
Mhm.
I would not, as your city attorney, would not allow you guys to revoke someone's license unless it was an actual convicted municipal court violation.
I
So-
agree, I agree.
And I
But that
think
doesn't mean you should take out this
And I
piece of
think
paper
so.
that's given to people when they get their application.
Yeah.
Unless you guys don't agree with some.
Well, this is a work session and all I'm
Yeah.
suggesting is that we, even though I believe they should have bear-proof trash cans, I don't, since it's not anywhere else in our code,
Correct.
I would take it out.
And
Or,
they could remedy that because as Nina's example, if they just leave the trash out in the front,
Mhm.
if the trash is outside, then it needs to be in a bear-proof trash can. But if they keep the garbage inside the garage like they're supposed to,
Until
then it
stuff
would never
falls
be an
along.
issue.
Right.
And I think
Mhm.
that's how they could probably get around that provision.
And none of this is an
Just
issue unless
following the
the
rules.
property is so out of compliance, that the neighbor's calling the city, that it's really having an impact on the city. Then you have something that you could,
Mhm.
look at.
How about you just remove the bear-proof trash
Trash
can from the
You
good
know,
neighbor
it was one
policy?
thing that the community had asked for.
Yeah, well,
That's why-
and,
that's
and
true.
one of the
That's
things I
true.
could say is you could reword it such that you say bear-proof trash cans if the cans are outside.
Yes.
If the trash cans are in the garage, it doesn't, somehow word
Yeah,
it such that.
That's a way to approach it, but again, I go back to, no one's requiring me to have a bear-proof
Exactly,
trash can. I
exactly.
mean, I'm smart enough to do that, but
Well,
no
I
one's
just don't
requiring
point
you
out,
to.
so,
But
yeah.
you're not gonna get a ticket.
No,
exactly.
So it's just a
Exactly.
guideline. It's just, trying to make it more respectable in the community.
And someone
For
sign
people
their
to-
name.
Now, it says bear-proof trash cans are required and must be
take out,
used.
well, you can
It
take.
does.
take
It's
out
very
required and
strongly
must be
worded on
used.
that.
Just reword it.
Reword that, and if you would reword 7, because you're saying I read and shall comply. You can say, and I will post it and encourage compliance with my residents or something, but you can't ask the person to, I shall comply. You can't force them for somebody else's behavior.
Well,
This
that's,
license you actually.
Doesn't call for you all. Yeah.
and that is.
that's-
I would like to make
It
another,
is.
I would like to make another point on this. The goal of the short-term rental whole issue is to make it regulated in a way that's not increasing the amount of government oversight. We're just saying we're staying within our zoning laws. And now we're trying to make our license clean up the fact that we were given license to everybody because we had no we had no train tracks for them to run on. Now we have train tracks. It's in the Citizens Initiative. And, you know, we want to put all these other things into it, but do we really want to be making one law for one people and another law for another people? Are we trying to be more, this is our community, this is the track we run on, and it applies, everything applies for everybody in that sense. And the zones clarify what you can do in certain zones. I just think we're complicated. That was a very complicated, I know it was what we initially brought out, 1455 or whatever. It's very complicated. We just need to do Title V and do it simple. If we could do it in a page or two, that would be wonderful. So, I just think we're overreaching a lot, and I don't understand why you're making in this ordinance that it has to come before city council. We don't have punitive stuff coming before city council. We have approval coming before city council, but the punitive happens through our municipal court.
You can't revoke someone's business license without due process from and that's in the Constitution. So the business license has value. So same thing with a liquor license. It would come in front of you to be revoked. So this is only in the very, very, very egregious case where you want to revoke someone's license. It has to come in front of you for a fair hearing. It's publicly noticed and that sort of thing. So
But-
most of the pages of this ordinance is really just that due process adherence.
But due process generally happens before a court of law.
For a violation, but to revoke a business license is in front of you, that's statutory. You as a
It comes
city.
before council.
Yeah, well,
Have we-
the city has an authority to grant business licenses. So to revoke a business license, it needs to be done fairly. I mean, some places do in front of a hearing officer, but that's, you guys are free, the hearing officer you'd pay for. Again, I've seen one of these hearings maybe once in like 8 years. It's like, it's a way to try to enforce. Usually you write them a letter first, you sit down with them first, but you cannot revoke someone's license, same thing with liquor license. You cannot revoke someone's license without due process, which is a fair public hearing in front of you all.
And
But you're
that's-
the ones
so-
who, the city has
that's-
granted the license.
And that's one of the reasons we are nonpartisan elected officials, because we do serve as judge and jury. That's a very important reason that we are nonpartisan. But that part, I don't really have an issue with. I'm just, I want the guidelines to correlate with code. And I think a recommendation to an STR owner to have bear-proof trash cans is a great idea, but but that's part of our code, I don't think it should be in the guidelines. It seems like everything else is very close to, oh, by the way, we've got a pretty strict don't feed the animal ordinance. And we're just letting them know that it exists. But we don't have get a bear-proof trash can ordinance.
If that is the hangout, we can change the language to, so there's the guidelines that are given, and then in the language that it seems to be holding people up is, I'll remove the violating the good neighbor guidelines as a reason to revoke the license, because I feel like you really could only revoke a license from a convicted municipal court violation. So
Yeah,
if that's the hangout.
That's what I was gonna say, Robert, is the municipal court comes in to hear the violations and citations for violating one of our code provisions. And then if they've done it more times than the code that allows, then we, as the judge and jury, if you will, hear their public hearing and we decide of whether or not to revocate the license.
Yeah.
So
But the
it go
rest, getting to that point
Hmm.
is absolutely before the municipal court.
So I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing in here about, we say respect for I'm sorry, where's the fires? The
Second
one,
one.
safety and prevention. What it's not really saying, and it should say, is something like, building a fire outside in an approved, whatever, safe distance from the building or whatever, because this here, if a visitor comes and says, oh yeah, no problem. There's no fire ban today or whatever it is, and they build this huge old bonfire in the back of some STR. That's not highlighting to them. It's not telling them nothing.
Completely agree. That's the section that I knew needed to be edited, so
Okay, good. Thank you.
it needs to be much stronger.
Yeah.
So I have, the only one the noise in the outdoor lighting, I'd actually prefer to see actual hours, because I've gone to STRs, there's quiet hours that are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yes,
Or, I mean, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then the, arrival time can't be at 2 o'clock in the morning.
correct.
And then I'm not necessarily a fan of the maintenance of your property, because if you're gonna run an STR, you're probably gonna have a nice looking property, and my neighbor can have a freaking disaster of their property, so I don't know, that one seems kind of silly to me, but if everybody else likes it, that's fine. And then
17 cars. in there.
17 cars, whatever. No, 17 cars is actually a violation of the code. And then otherwise, I didn't really have any issues with the rest of it.
So it might be helpful, just going back to the wildfire, if maybe we provided the link to the sheriff's site that says what kind of restrictions are in place,
Absolutely.
so that they would have a quick reference to be able to check and see what status we're in.
And if there's
As
actually
a-
QR, if there's actually
Yeah,
a QR
something like
code,
that,
that
so
would be
that
probably.
They'll know where to look. Since it's communication.
Yeah.
You know.
I recommend a QR code as opposed to a link, because if it's
That's
printed on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
there's no way
Can't
getting there.
exactly get-
It's a good idea.
No, great point.
Simplicity.
And I'm not sure cigarette butts shouldn't go under fire as opposed to trash, but or both.
Oh, I like that.
Not
Yeah,
just put
stick that over.
cigarette butts, but all flammable material that's smokable.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
This is Colorado.
yeah. Cigarettes, cigars, whatever, yeah.
Vaping.
Oh,
No.
I'm sure the cigars is something I was thinking of.
So that's all. I
Oh, he's thinking of doobies.
On train running.
All right, so we will take that feedback and update the good neighbor guidelines. As far as the short-term rental application, are you in agreement that $100 fee for the application is reasonable? It's right in line with our other ZDP applications, so that's why we picked that amount. It's right in between, what is it, a adjacent dwelling unit, and what's the other one?
An accessory dwelling unit requires a little more refinement and work on the part of planning staff, and I believe that's like $169. And then a home occupation permit is about the $69 point. And this does kind of fall in between in terms of the level of review that we would need to do, which is, without doing a lot of research, why you got this particular number.
Well, a question I'd have with that is once they've applied for a short-term rental license, is it a one-time application and then the renewal is there $35 a year, or is it $135 each year and they have to renew this application each year,
We envisioned it to be renewed every year.
every year? You're gonna give them a simple form that says no change, or a box that says no change?
Same.
It's gonna be the same form.
Huh?
It would be the same. They would just
Same form.
click renewal instead of new.
That's, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This can be done online, right?
We will work that out, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, but you're still filling in the blanks. Yeah, yeah. Time is money, come on.
All right,
So-
anything further? Okay, go.
Oh, yeah, I certainly have further. Oh, no, well, are we doing everything on our desk or just these two? Yeah, so
Everything, yeah.
everything on our desk, I'd like to turn our attention. Yeah, are we done with these?
I'm done.
So that we could turn our attention to the draft we have on our desk. I asked Aaron if he would pass these out to everyone. Councilmember Connors, myself, and some of the community looked at the initial draft and made some suggested changes. Unfortunately, they don't all come up in red, so it's gonna be challenging to see that. Do you have it, Aaron, on the?
Yeah, I'm gonna share it right now.
Thank you. But the most obvious one is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 whereas. We thought it was good that we put in the actual citizens initiative. So instead of saying amends Title 18. Well, this is what was on the ballot, so if we have to change some of the, words of that, that's fine, but this would took it right off the ballot. And put the words exactly in there, so there's no question about what was said.
It's the ordinance.
In reference to the, correct,
This ordinance
well, it references if it's,
references the language,
correct.
which is the typical.
Well, we put it in there specifically because it was a citizens initiative and it makes it it ties them together without any question. So, and also to ensure that we're not putting conflicting language between what the initiative says and what we're saying in this ordinance. So Aaron, do you have the next change on this on your highlighted copy so we can see what it says? There you go. 5.22020.
Rob, can I ask a question real quick before you go further?
Yeah.
I received an email from Mr. Sparnans
Okay.
with regards to 3 sections in the ordinance that he would ask me to bring up tonight.
So they're in this.
They're in this.
They're in this,
Thank
yeah.
you. So I don't need to bring them up again.
Well, you can watch to see that they're all.
No, I don't need to. I just
If
wanted
we-
to be sure that Mr. Sparnans'
He is, yeah.
communication has been incorporated.
You happy? Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
There,
Okay. I just committed to you that I would do that, so I
Correct, yeah.
wanted to be.
So,
Can I just jump in? The only thing,
Sure.
is number 2, that, obviously you guys direct policy, but that's more of a legal, you as city council, we could change the way it's written, but city council establishes those fees, not the municipal court. It's kind of like a separation of powers. So, we could put something that makes it more clear, but the municipal court doesn't, I mean, they could impose a range, but you guys should have a fee schedule where you have your certain fee, penalties for the fees. So
well, then it'll come up later then. If that's the case, and that has to change has to be made, then that's fine.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's only I was-
You'll see it come up a little later.
The resolution of city council, that's what we do for any.
Correct.
We put a fee to-
All our fees are.
All of our fees are done that way, so. the
Every year.
municipal court-
I could reword it to make it more clear, but just to be technically correct, that's the only reason I'm speaking up. Otherwise, obviously, I'm here to take policy.
Right. Okay, that's fine. And that's why we pay you the big bucks. All right, so the first one is verify that the business address of the short-term rental complies with permitted zoning uses before issuing and renewing a business license. The second one is just adding, and that's fine. The second one, we'll just leave it as is. And that's, or you make the necessary changes to make it clear. Yeah, sure. Okay. 3 is full-time resident owners, operators that provide short-term rental subject to existing codes and ordinances are permitted throughout the city. That's defining the permanent resident versus the number 4, which is short-term rental units that are not primary residents of the owner operator are not allowed are only allowed, in commercial zoning districts subject to existing codes and ordinances. So that clarifies those 2, we're on page 1. Aaron what's the next one? There it is.
That's not yours.
What's that on the right there?
That's.
So the next 2, I and J, this is about Title V. This isn't about trying to regulate and saying where it is and where it isn't allowed. That's all should be under Title 18. So we're suggesting striking I, which is the following units, structures and uses shall be prohibited from operating short-term rentals. Well, we've already defined where short-term rentals are operating.
That subsection is already in Title 18. Then
Right, yeah.
then the next one's a policy direction. Do you guys want to regulate the parking?
Say again.
I would say just, so we could strike, that's already in Title 18. Now, it was just kind of repetitive, just to.
Right.
But J is for the rest, that's a policy decision for a majority of you. Do you or do you not want to regulate making sure that there's enough parking and that there's not parking on the street?
Well, the point of that
Excuse me.
is we're not, I'm sorry.
It is an 18, or it doesn't say that you have a plan, but 18 does say, you have to have the spaces off the street, you can't park on the street.
So it's already in, my point is it's already in,
And so is the whereas that you've amended, Robert.
Does, do
But
you
the
want to
It's
say?
plan-
already in the ordinance.
Karen wants to say
I
something.
didn't need to speak. Arnie took care of it. Thank you.
But the plan, is the plan, I don't have the initiative in front of me. The plan, and it's up to you guys, but the plan is not, the reason this is here is that the applicant creates a plan so they could show where they actually could fit these cars.
Oh,
So that's why the language was here, but that's,
then that's fine. Okay. All right.
they want to keep it, yeah.
You can go ahead and put,
Change that so. it makes
J
more
back.
sense.
you just make it more, just
Okay.
make it clearer if you can.
Yep. Yep,
Uh,
keep, make more clear.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, I'm saying,
Oh,
I'm writing keep, make more clear.
yeah, okay. And Aaron, what's the next one?
It's 3.
Where is it? Three, there is no outstanding, is that it?
It conforms to the zoning
I'm sorry,
district
I'm on the
table
wrong
of
page.
permitted uses.
So the part that's changing is we're putting a sentence before what's in the existing there. It says conforms to the zoning district table of permitted uses in section 1809-090 for short-term rental units, all applicable requirements in section 522, and that continues. So it's just a comma and then continuing on with what's already on that point, number 3.
Thank you, Kelly, that's the one.
That was one of
You're
it.
welcome.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's 6 in the next one.
Sections that need to be.
And then the next one is number 6 on under C. And I think this is the same, except that the formatting is messed up because we'll leave that to you. Conforms with zoning district and permitted uses in section 18.190.090 for short-term rental units and then on with the rest of the section. All applicable requirements in section 5.220.020 and section in section 18. Did we add that one there, Arnie, or did we put that on the other one? Is that in red? I can't see it.
It's in.
That's in red, so we add,
Provisions of 18 that could be violated beyond what's in 5.220. So just like for the initial issuance, they check 1878.50 for renewal, you also check 1878.50.
okay, and what's the next
The
one?
penalties.
Penalties. So under penalties, we,
Excuse me.
well, I can't quite see that. There it says, short-term rental license shall be subject to property owner to a fine of, oh, thank you, a fine in an amount of up to $1,000 per day per violation to be established. We put in here, Nina, by the municipal court. So is that something we would set the?
Yeah, so I'm gonna make
and-
that more clear. So there's 2 things. I recommend always, because codes are harder to change, is that what in these type of sections you put, you refer to the resolution and then you all pass the resolution, which is I've actually had on my to-do list for like 3 years. Once Woodland Park passes their ordinance, I'm gonna recommend a resolution where you guys tell me what fees and what penalties you want to add to your already existing fee and penalty schedule.
Okay,
So I'll reword that and it won't say $1,000, the resolution to say that because maybe in 10 years if inflation keeps going up, you.
that
wanna
might be
change-
too much or too little. Yeah, okay.
Because Robert, this is like what we were talking about at the UAC where we have that stupid $30 fine or maximum on the water. So this is the same thing. You don't want to put the dollar amount in the actual code.
Okay, okay.
I'll make them more clear.
But you'll make it more clear. That was the point of it.
You
And then,
put
I think
public
that,
flogging,
well, we were thinking about that, but we didn't know if we had the chains and the headlock, you know?
Then we thought at night in the barracks.
What's that?
I think a new resolution at the same time that you pass this ordinance to.
I don't know. Nina,
You do that annually,
the resolution, when does that come out?
beginning of the year.
It should. I remember about a year and a half ago, we recommended updates to it because it's very low and it kind of, I was gonna also reintroduce that idea. So I could,
This would be added to it.
It would be added to it.
because this section doesn't exist yet.
Could you do a resolution? So.
Amending the fee schedule. I'm sorry, you could amend the fee schedule at any time. That's the point. You usually, if cities amend it every year and any time, and resolutions are passed on one meeting. You know, it's easier.
That's all I have. So, yeah.
Any further questions?
I would just ask that the entire document be reviewed by the city attorney for form and make sure everything's legal. I don't think that the people that prepared it have law degrees, so I just ask that that be reviewed for legal review, please.
And I asked Aaron to email me this version, so I see the red. But yes, if there's anything that I understand, if there's anything that keeps in line with the direction, but I feel it needs to be worked a little bit differently, I will, and I'll point that out to you.
Well, you get the essence, so you get,
Yes,
you get the
I
essence.
get the.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, excellent. So what do we envision next steps to look like for this?
Let's be done with it.
Here.
I think 2 years was long enough. But yeah, we should be able to, Nina, if everybody's agreeing, we should be able to vote on it after public comment and 2 weeks after that, how the process works. I'm not gonna.
Ordinance, so it would be need to be put in an ordinance for first and second reading.
Correct.
Right, so.
But by exception, we would do an update by resolution of penalties and fees.
And that would be a separate item, but we'll put that on the same agenda. This is typically what we do. We'll put a resolution amending your fee schedule on the same agenda as the second reading of
Yes,
the ordinance after.
thank you.
That's what we typically do.
Excellent.
So another question I have for this, so when you bring this and tidy up this document, you can also tidy up the good neighbor policy. So are we gonna run them tandem? So we have agreement that the good neighbor policy is what we've kind of talked about here today?
Correct, because I need
No, go.
I
have
we need the application and the good neighbor guidelines at the same time that we roll this out, so yes.
So we're gonna actually approve that? Is that gonna be an ordinance or something?
So-
Approve those?
Well,
How's that gonna work?
So on the initial rollout of the good neighbor guidelines and the application, obviously I want buy-in from council and the community, right? But after that, the city manager will then update it periodically as needed.
But that being said, I'm gonna make the changes to the ordinance that I heard you all say that deleting the revocation, the ability to revoke only for violation of good neighbor guidelines. It'll just be for code violations. So that I'm gonna amend the code of the ordinance accordingly. So that will be in front of you. And then a draft good neighbor guidelines will be in front of you.
Much cleaner version.
But with those on the agenda, those would actually go under the new business, wouldn't they? The guidelines and the
They're gonna be more
application
like
or
addendums to
to
the
the ordinance.
ordinance as
Okay.
opposed
This is
to,
administrative.
because they don't,
Okay.
yeah, they're administrative. All right, well, thank you all very much.
That's
it.
That's it?
We have objections? What, any fees?
Thank you, Arnie, for your assistance. Appreciate it.
Can I throw in one comment though?
That's up to the mayor.
To the mayor. Said no comment.
Yeah, we weren't taking public comments. So
That's fine.
if you want to talk to them, we're adjourned, so let them know. Done. We'll be back here at 6:30.
Grab a beer.
No.
Real fast about that.